Is this offensive? This is from Peter King on the 49ers Talk podcast on NBC Sports Bay Area.
If you're Kyle Shanahan, you want to be fair, but you also have a Super Bowl-ready team right now, and you can't be experimenting. You don't know if Trey Lance is your guy. You just don't. And so because you don't know he's your guy, what are you going to do? You just have to move forward. And look, you and I were kind of joking about it out at practice in terms of what's his next team if he does go. And even 5 years from now, is Trey Lance even going to be playing football? That's a question I would have, because we just haven't seen enough to know anything about what he can do.
All I can be is just straight honest with you.
Finally.
About time, right?
Right, 2 years in.
I hate this. I hate it.
Why do you hate it?
I absolutely.
It's an expert NFL voice weighing in with his expert opinion.
Well, because I know how this feels to many people, probably one of them being Trey, and it stinks. This hits people in a certain way when comments like this are made. You can have the conversation that Peter King just had without saying, I don't know if he's going to be in the league in 5 years. Everything else he said there was completely fair. And I don't even know if it's unfair to wonder if he's going to be in the league in 5 years. The average NFL career is how long? It's like 3.5 years,
yeah.
2.5, 3.5 years. So if you want, it's fair to ask that about every person. I don't know. Is George Kittle going to be in the league 5 years from now? I have no idea.
I think it's especially fair when you talk about the quarterback position and especially a first-round quarterback. So if you want to play I don't even know if he'll be in the league in 5 years game, Trevor Lawrence, 99.9% chance he'll be in the league unless he wants to go Andrew Luck.
Well, right.
He's going to be in the league.
Any solidified starter.
No, but in terms of where Trey is, if you want to go to his draft class, Justin Fields, will he be in the league in 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
I put it at about a 95% chance. Zach Wilson, he's probably about a 30% chance.
Yeah, I don't know.
McCorkle Jones, I'd put him in about the same 40 to 50% chance.
Oh, I'd take the over on that. He'll be in the league. He'll be a backup for somebody if it doesn't work out.
Maybe, but I mean, think about who we look at for backups. You like to get a guy who's got some real experience and some real gravitas, and he's not it. Like Mitch Trubisky is the kind of a backup that Zach Wilson would be or Mac Jones would be.
The normal cadence, a la Sam Darnold, is if you're a first-round quarterback and then you get done with those 5 years and that team doesn't like you anymore, you get to go be a backup. That's what Sam Darnold is going through right now. He was number 3 overall pick. The Jets are like, that ain't it. There's a little stop in Carolina, and now Sam Darnold is going to be a backup, unless he can somehow play his way back into being a starter. Mitchell Trubisky, first-round quarterback, that ain't it. Now you get to go be a backup. Mac Jones, if they get 3 more years and they're like, that ain't it, he'll be a backup. It's not like he's stinking up the joint out there.
Right.
Took a team to the playoffs as a rookie.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Well, why do you laugh at that?
Because I mean, now 7 teams get in the playoffs, so it doesn't have the same import that it used to. So almost half the teams make the playoffs.
Right, but your top half of the league, you're not going to get exiled
and
out of the league.
The idea of, I guess the notion of he took his team to the playoffs cracks me up because he was not great. Their team was much better around him than he was great.
That's fair.
He was fine. But it's the notion of he took his team to the playoffs.
But being fine is usually good enough to be a backup.
If you have a good enough team around you, you can you can take your team to the playoffs. Like Geno Smith took his team to the playoffs.
Yeah, like we're getting stuck on this. I'm very confident Mac Jones will still be in the league. I don't know if he'll ever be a starter again. But this is my point with the Peter King thing. And everybody can weigh in on this. We'll take your calls. 888-957-9570. I get stuck on this for this reason. Look at who people in the Trey Lance conversation have gotten mad at. Okay? Reporters with gravitas, if you will. Peter King, Mike Silver, Rich Eisen, Colin Cowherd. These are all people who within the last month or so have made comments that make it sound like they are dismissing the career of Trey Lance. I don't even think they usually mean to, but it sounds that way sometimes. The problem with it is you hate to see those kind of comments made when someone's only started 4 games. But here's the other side. Where do you guys think that they're getting those opinions? You think they're getting that opinion with their eyes? Do you think Peter King has just been at Niner practice every day and has decided that Trey Lance is not an NFL-worthy player? These are the kinds of people who have access directly to Kyle Shanahan. They're talking to Kyle Shanahan.
And the other 31 Kyle Shanahans around the league,
right,
is the point.
They're talking directly to the top, and they are coming out of that conversation with opinions like, I don't even know if this guy's going to be in the league. You have no idea what you have. Brock Purdy's the starter. They're trying to trade him. They're probably going to trade him. These are the things that people say.
He might get cut.
Right. And it ticks everyone off, and I get it, because why would that be okay for a guy who's only started 4 games? But they're not just making it up. They're coming away from high-level conversations with that in the back of their mind as a possibility.
Right, and these high-level conversations are not just with the one team. You're getting a sense, especially from Peter King, who I think has only been at camp one time for the 49ers, and he travels around to all the camps, and he talks to all the people, and so when you're at all these other camps and you have a chance to get opinions from a wide range of sources, then you can get a more founded opinion. And I think that what Peter King is saying is somewhat plausible. If Trey Lance doesn't work out with the 49ers and he goes to another team and he's in a quarterback competition and maybe he loses that quarterback competition and then he's a backup somewhere, he might not be in the league. Think about Mitchell Trubisky, the name that you mentioned a little while ago. If you would have said what Peter King just said about Mitchell Trubisky being in the league in 5 years, that's a fair way to look at it because he was in Chicago for, 3 years? Then he went to Buffalo for 1.
I think he was there for probably the full
4. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option.
Yeah, the full experience would be my guess. I'll pull up the reference page right now.
Yeah, I'll pull it up right here. I'll get it faster than you.
No, you won't. Mitchell had 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 years in Chicago.
He had all 4. He had the rookie deal.
And then Buffalo for 1 in Pittsburgh. So if you would have said what you said about Trubisky, he might not be in the league in 5 years from that point. He was in, because that would have been in his 3rd year, and then he had 1 more in Chicago, 1 in Buffalo, 1 in Pittsburgh, and after his deal in Pittsburgh's up, is he going to be somebody else's backup?
Here's the difference.
Maybe.
Here's the difference between all the examples that we're coming up with from Darnold to Trubisky to Mac Jones. The difference on all of these is the fact that you're looking at players who came in like normal when you're drafted early and started. So you start for 4 years. And then someone's like, okay, maybe you're not it, but you've got experience. So we're kind of digging the idea of you being a QB2. So Darnold gets that opportunity and Trubisky gets that opportunity. And I have no doubt that Mac Jones will get that opportunity. I don't know if Zach Wilson gets it. And I don't know if Trey Lance gets it because at the end of the way it's tracking right now, I'm not a future teller, but the way it's tracking right now, at the end of his 4 years, if Brock Purdy's the starter for the next 2 years, at the end of Trey's 4 years, is another team going to be like, that's our backup? Or are they going to be like, we have no idea what the hell he can do?
Trubisky started 50 games in 4 years.
If Trey Lance gets to the end of next year and he's still a 49er and he's still started 4 games, who's going to be like, well, that's our backup?
Right.
We still have no clue what he can do. You have no clue. And so it is, in my opinion, as Peter says it right now, it is more fair than the other ones. However, it still just doesn't sound good. This is the slot that I know everyone's searching for, is how to make it sound fair to Trey when he hasn't played. However, the evaluation is the evaluation. I think sometimes we make it sound like he hasn't played just because it's the rest of the world's fault that he hasn't played. On some level, he hasn't played because Brock Purdy beat him out. Brock Purdy beat him out. And so the evaluation is but I get it. I get that when someone says something like that, is this guy even going to be in the league? It sounds awful because he hasn't even played.
Right. And it sounds awful, but it's the reality of pro sports and It's the reality of pro football. And Jordan Love, I think, is a good comp in terms of a quarterback who hasn't played. And now Jordan Love gets a chance to play. Jordan Love was taken 26th in the 2020 draft. So he's now going to be in year 4 with the Packers. And now he gets a chance. If something were to happen to Jordan Love, a la Trey Lance, let's say Jordan Love gets 5 quarters and he gets knocked out and he gets hurt and he's done for the year, that might be it for Jordan Love. I mean, you might be in a spot where, if the Packers totally tank and free fall, they might look at taking a quarterback in the draft next year, and that might be all for Jordan Love. Now, is that fair that Jordan Love had to sit behind Aaron Rodgers and didn't get to play and finally got a chance, and then Jordan Love hypothetically gets hurt? No, it's not fair, but pro sports is not about fair. And if Trey Lance doesn't ever get a chance here, and then he goes somewhere else, and he doesn't get a chance to flourish there, and he's out of the league in 5 years, it's not fair, but that's just the way it goes, kid.
But you have to do things, whether it's in practice or whatever. You gotta force your way onto the field somehow. You know what I mean? Like go back to Tim Tebow, okay, and that whole experience, which got all kinds of weird, and obviously there was high level of fandom, and he had this knack for doing cool things in the fourth quarter of games, and he'd beat you 14-10 or whatever, and people were like, this guy's amazing. And there were reports coming out of the inside of his practices where his teammates were like, you wouldn't believe this. Like, the guy can't throw the ball on target 5 yards away from himself. And so while people were like, Tebow mania is taking over, but they're like, you got to force your way on to the field. And so I do believe that Trey Lance has had and will continue to have chances behind the scenes with teams to force his way onto the field. I do not think the 49ers are going to be his last stop by any stretch. But 5 years is a long time. If he does 5 more training camps and there's no coach that goes, dude, he's forcing his way onto the field, is it possible that he's not in the league? Yeah, I guess so.
Yes, and a lot of that, it doesn't come down to forcing your way on the field. Sometimes it comes down to luck, because he went to Buffalo and he backed up Josh Allen, and there's no way he could have forced his way on the field. Josh Allen is the starter in Buffalo, and Trubisky was there as in case of injury, backup. And now in Pittsburgh, it's a little similar, but if Kenny Pickett comes out and Kenny Pickett stinks, he might have the chance to then force his way on the field.
That's not quite what I mean, because you're sort of spotlighting one roster, and this is my point for Trey.
I'm spotlighting half the league. But there are situations that he won't have the ability to force his way on the field.
That's right, except, in my opinion, if you are a backup behind a minted starter and you keep flashing every chance you get, like, here's my latest example. DTR is going to force his way onto the field. It may not be in Cleveland. They have Deshaun Watson and $250 million. But when you have those opportunities, whether it's a practice buzz, the way the league sees you, what you do in preseason games, Matt Schaub was one of these guys years ago. Jimmy Garoppolo was. Garoppolo was stuck. How's he going to force his way onto the field because Tom Brady? Well, that's how. The league looks at you when you get 2 seconds of a chance and you look great, and the league goes, oh, my God, that's a guy. And the 49ers traded a second-round draft pick. 6 games later, you're the highest-paid player in the NFL. If Trey were, for example, in these preseason games, lighten that thing up, he would be on the field. If it wouldn't here, it'd be somewhere else, because someone would call and be like, we're going to give you our first-rounder for Trey Lance. That's what I'm getting at. I firmly believe that in professional sports, you cannot hide the talent. And if it's there, they will find you. And quarterbacks are so hard to find that if the league looked at him and went, dude, that's a guy, then they will find a home. They will absolutely force his way onto the field.
Well, if he was a
hasn't
guy,
done that yet.
he would force his way on the field here. And so that's
correct. He hasn't done it yet.
Brock Purdy and his great little start to his career aside, if he had shown anything like that, if Kyle Shanahan would have seen that at all, then there would have been some sort of a competition. But there was never even a whiff of a competition. So at least here in San Francisco, he hasn't shown what you're talking about in terms of being able to force his way on the field.
Right.
And we'll see about DTR. It's easy to rave about him after 2 preseason games. These are games that don't have the same import as the regular season. But, if you continue to flash and show out, there are many quarterback-hungry teams out there that would look at a player like that. And that's what the Niners want Trey Lance to be, somebody that other teams are so desperate to have that they'll give more capital to bring him in.
888-957-9570. Want to take a lot of your calls on this, so let's roll. Skills in Vallejo is always one of our favorites. Hey, Skills, you're on with Willie and Dibby. What's up?
Hey, Willard. Hey, Dibs. Good to be on with you again. Dibs, welcome back. You really sound good. It's really good to have you back this week. I want to kind of stand up in defense of Peter King, and not just him, but in defense of people, pretty much everyone in his profession, who are asked their opinion and give their opinion, and then public kind of tends to come down on them, and it kind of makes you wonder why they even want to give it anymore sometimes. He's one of the few guys I consider football royalty in terms of sports writers, commentators. Him and John Clayton are pretty much it. Rest in peace, John Clayton. So when Peter King says something, I'm going to listen. And when he's saying that Trey might be out of the league in a few years, there's something to that, and it's not necessarily because of the way Trey is playing. We had a guy here in San Francisco, came into the lineup, played very well right off the bat. This was not long ago, maybe 12 years ago. And no one would have guessed within 4.5 seasons of that he'd be long out of the league. Things happen, and I'm not saying Trey Lance is going to beat Colin Kaepernick either as a player or as a activist, whatever you want to call it. But things happen. I mean, Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. He's not in the league for that horrible, tragic reason. Andrew Luck ended up retiring after 7 years in the league because he just couldn't take the punishment anymore. And just today, not today, but last season, Baker Mayfield was out of the league for a minute. So we just don't know. And I don't think Peter King meant to be harsh on the level of Trey's abilities. I just think he's just being realistic. We don't know what the future holds for him, good or bad. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Well, Skills, I think that's great. Thanks for calling. But I also would say this, you're kind of striking the chord of anything unforeseen could happen. And obviously that's true. Kyle Shanahan with his joke from a couple years ago, none of us even know if we're going to be alive by then. So anything could happen to knock anybody out of the league. I don't believe that's what Peter King is getting at, though. He's not questioning whether or not Trey Lance is going to be in the league because of some awful, like a car accident or something. He's saying that Trey Lance to this point has not shown that he's worthy of being in the NFL. It doesn't mean that he won't, but to this point, he has not. And that is based, no doubt, on his conversations with high-level people around the league. Now, the Kaepernick thing, that's straight racism. He's not in the league because of racism. And yes, that exists on many, many levels that are more intricate than what we saw with Colin. And so that is a part of the conversation here. There's absolutely no doubt. There's no way to escape it. And I don't think we have any interest in avoiding it. It's fine to have that part of the conversation. But Colin, for me, that one was just A to B. That was racism. That was fear among the old boy network of having kneeling in the anthem as a part of your sideline, which is odd because every single sideline was doing it at the time. But nobody wanted Fox News to show up to practice. That's it. It had nothing to do with whether, Colin wasn't actually that good, so what? He was definitely good enough to be at least.
He was better than, half of the league. He was better than every single backup and half the starters.
Don't make me pull out my Peterman again.
Yeah.
Colin was at minimum in some. Well, come on. Sorry if you weren't on the show.
Come on, people.
If you weren't with us yesterday.
We were talking about quarterbacks with a touchdown to interception ratio that is upside down.
Upside down.
More picks. Your Peterman very fast. Yeah, he did pull it out quick yesterday.
I mean, Colin was clearly one of the best, 30 quarterbacks on the planet.
Even 64. If you want to hate on Colin for what he did on the field, he was very much at the very least worthy of being someone's backup. But you're right. Institutionally, the league, they stacked it against him because what he did, and it was racist. And I don't think that same thing is in place here when it comes to Trey Lance.
No, not yet.
Well, we haven't seen it yet in terms of, his second chance and whether or not he gets a second chance.
Yeah.